It's not as if Greenwald or Tulsi won't go on MSNBC or MSNBC or CNN. They don't get invited anymore. They used to.
Yeah.
They used to. Glenn Greenwald was on
Yeah.
MSNBC all the time until he fought back with them. He wouldn't agree with their narrative, and they just stopped inviting him.
One of the things that I've noticed is people are becoming clear with understanding this rise of leftism in our country, that it's not liberalism. There's an anti-free speech movement. There's this embrace of social justice, critical race theory. You'll hear all these different things, being woke. And there's degrees of that. And one of the things I think is interesting, people always dance around cancel culture, or they're trying to say cancel culture doesn't exist. So here's what I've come up with a definition. I want to run it by you guys. We can all speak the language. We can have it documented. I said, cancel culture is losing your position, role, or job due to pressure for an unrelated social transgression, usually for political differences or language offenses, meaning political correctness. How do you think I did there? Losing your position, role, or job due to pressure for an unrelated social transgression, meaning it's not about your actual job or role. It's usually something else that you've done outside of it. So it's a tweet that you made, or it's a comment that someone made, or it's something else that's getting you canceled. And then it's usually political ideology or a word that you use that was offensive. So I had to figure out a way to tweak it so I could include like James Damore, who was basically kicked out of Google just because he was saying, well, a lot of women are not going into this field. That's why there's not a lot of women. But you're not allowed to do that. You're sexist basically at that point. So you're out. He's basically canceled. And as far as I know, he's made so much money of just being canceled because it was like an anomaly to have someone in the tech field. He basically is now able to speak on it. But I had to try to figure out a way to cover the general term well enough. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's not bad.
Okay. I got still the furrowed brow. So Alex is not convinced. He'll tweak my definition. We'll see. We'll play with it. Okay. It's a good first try. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I'm old enough to remember in the 80s, something called political correctness,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's I look at it as political correctness on steroids, right? That's what it's turned out to be.
With like a boycott option.
It can really affect your livelihood now.
Yeah, they have like a boycott option that can be attached to you personally. Like before, political correctness was more like, slap on the wrist, don't say those things. But it didn't come with like political shaming. It didn't come from, oh, we're going to dox you. We're going to call your employer and let them know that they think you're a racist, or they think you're a homophobe, or whatever is or phobe that they want to throw your way, try to get you fired, or get you, you're no longer going to be able to host of this show or have this role, or you'll become unhireable, those kinds. You'll unperson you. That's kind of the way I looked at it. And I wanted to really dissect this thing because I think it's very. I've been listening to there's an Unsafe Space YouTube channel, and Carrie Smith is a co-host on there. And one of the things that she said was that one of the things that took this, that the reason that this took fire, and she went back to the George Floyd incident. And I really wanted to, what really struck me, and she didn't say this, but this is my thought on it, was it took the political correctness under the guise of racism, and it made these social justice warriors and activists successful at something. They found a way to be successful and create a division that got them what they wanted. And that was something that, in like unprecedented levels. So I'm not sure that that had really happened before. And I think that's a pretty accurate thing. Because for me, I always go back to the protests and rallies as being this big pivot point, right? Because we were still kind of on a lot of lockdowns, a lot of shutdowns. But once the rallies and the protest stuff started breaking out everywhere, I don't know about you guys, when we were in Florida, we were like, okay, let's go back to life. Timeline's about right.
You know what? As far as the protests in Florida were going, it seemed like those protests weren't actually as destructive as in other places around the country. And I don't
know.
Oh, sure.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think
the police in Florida were not going to play that game the same way as these other towns, other cities.
So one of the things that I've watched a couple of channels, and this really kind of helped me through. You guys have heard me complain and moan about the comic book industry and being taken over by the social justice warriors, because they have. There's a couple terms this one guy came up with. His name is Richard Meyer, and he had been doing these sort of like social justice comic book reviews and conversations, and because these people are on Twitter and they are nuts on Twitter, and it's like, you're a comic book person, but in their little world they're like these quasi celebrities, and it's almost like the adrenaline rush, the dopamine. So one of the things that they believe is a term he came up with, he called endorsement. So when you're talking to a leftist, this is why the leftist doesn't think Bill Maher should have Ben Shapiro on his show. This is why Rogan is 6 degrees of separation from a white supremacist, because he's interviewed somebody who may have interviewed somebody. When you have someone on your show or you do whatever, you're endorsing the things that they believe. You're giving them a voice and a platform, because they look at everything as this platform and this opportunity to move a movement. And since they look at things that way, this is the other one called transference or projection. They think that we do too. So as far left as they are, they think the people that are on the right, they feel the same way. So the only reason that you're going to go on those shows is to move your platform and your message, which isn't not 100% wrong, but it's taken to the nth degree because it's endorsing something, not just letting you have free speech. Is that a fair way to describe that element of their personality and some of the stuff that's gone on? Because I think it really, really kind of captures some of the outrage that we see sometimes.
Go ahead first, Bob.
No, I'm on board. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, what was weird for me was that I could never get my head around why people are just so bent out of shape. You can't talk to that person. They said this, or they can't talk to that person. So on me personally, this is what happened. I was like, okay. So on this little comic book creator, they unfollow, they block me. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. Well, come to find out, this person's notorious of looking at who your friends are, who you follow. So therefore, if you follow or you friend people that they've already deemed the unpeople, you're in that same classification. You endorse the things that they say and do. You're like all part of it. There's no way to not be part of these tribes. They put you in groups, even if you're not in groups. They don't believe in free speech the way we do. It's just very, very fascinating to think of these sort of like sociological principles around how they behave.
Yeah. Well, look at the new Surgeon General that DeSantis just appointed. Did y'all hear about that?
Oh yeah, I have that on my notes. That's part of my behind the scenes. How do I call it? The behind the scenes COVID misinformation thing, because that came to us via a press release. And come to find out, there's so much more to that story. But yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say. I mean, I don't recall his name off the top of my head, but he Harvard Medical School, Harvard PhD, pretty good. Hi there, pretty good professional cred, right? He came from UCLA, and then people were digging up stuff on him, finding he was like for hydroxychloroquine, and he's not the biggest mask endorser and stuff like that.
He's been pretty anti-mask on some of that
right.
stuff. Like he said it's basically exaggerated protection. Yeah. He said, ivermectin's not the worst thing in the world. Talk to your doctor. But that's not how it's being brought to the light.
But nothing surprising. That's what you would expect DeSantis to a point, right? He got rid of Scott Rifkin, who I used to work for the Department of Health, and I was not a big fan. But if you go on Twitter, you're seeing like all these Harvard Medical School grads coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, I went to school with him. I never knew anything about that." Man, I mean, he just like pulled the wool over my eyes. That kind of talk, of course, not nearly as friendly. Yeah.
Well, that kind of goes to one of the other principles is that this comic book guy used this term, is probably not appropriate, but I couldn't think of a good replacement, was that they hunt in packs. So once the meat is there, especially like something like Twitter, it's like a cesspool of attack. So it's not like one person comes at you and gives you a hard time. We're used to that. That's pretty normal life. That's every day that ends in Y. But this whole thing where they'll bombard your employer, they'll bombard you, that kind of thing, or every Harvard grad comes out of the woodwork to go, oh no, this guy can no longer speak on campus. He's not welcome here. He's not even welcome to be part of the alumni anymore. Kick him out of the club. Those kinds of things. Alex, how do you view some of the left and some of these different things that you have seen?
Okay, so to the original thing that you were talking about, I actually listened to some of this week between Glenn Greenwald and Chelsea Manning. Is that now Chelsea Manning is like trying to cancel Glenn Greenwald because Glenn Greenwald goes on Tucker Carlson, and
Yes.
you know, he'll go on any state, he'll go on anything at all
Right.
in order to go out there. I really and look, I know that Glenn Greenwald is a very progressive person, and that he is he's, you know, he definitely has some ideological differences between me, but the one things that we share is freedom of speech. And, you know, there's a lot of things when it comes to going after government corruption that Glenn Greenwald is phenomenal on. And if there was no bigger cheerleader for Chelsea Manning, or who was, I forget his name before he
Bradley
transitioned,
Manning.
Bradley
Yeah.
Manning. But there is no bigger cheerleader than Glenn Greenwald. And for Chelsea Manning to basically try to cancel the guy because he goes on Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or whatever just seems to be so counterproductive. And I do think, though, that deep down that these people know that their ideology is bankrupt, that like they cannot stand someone to be able to beat them in an argument, and this is why they do it. And people like Glenn and like even Jimmy Dore and Tulsi Gabbard, they will go on those other places to talk because they really do believe what they're talking about. And while again, I would have disagreements with those people, I'm glad that they're there, and I would like to debate issues with them because I think it would be done above board. It would be done with honesty, and we may come up with different conclusions at the end, but I don't think that the ad hominem attacks would be the same. So I think that you have to be picky and choosy. Now, at the same time, and Brandon, you may not like it that I say it this way, I say you cancel them back. Like, don't go on their stuff then. Like, then you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. Don't talk to me. You stay over there. I'll stay over here. But I'll find people that I want to deal with. It's the same thing that Bill Maher's going with. It's really weird at times like this who the allies are and who the allies aren't, because you can tell guys like Bill Maher, who I would say is wildly inconsistent in some ways, when it comes to speech and to political correctness and things like that, he's always been pretty much the same way. And I got a lot of respect for that. And it annoys me to no end why these people are like, well, you can't go on there, or you can't do that, or you can't do that. And as a person that has, when I ran for office and even afterwards, was very much not allowed to go on any of these shows, like I don't want to say I take offense to it, but it does bother me in some aspect. But in other aspects, now I'm just like, you know what, ignore them then, because they're useless. They're worthless. Just go where you want to go who will put you on, and, you know, the rest of them just cancel. You're like personally cancel those people.
Bob, what were you going to jump in there with?
Yeah, I was just going to say, everything Alex said is spot on. The one thing he did leave out, though, is it's not as if Greenwald or Tulsi won't go on MSNBC or CNN. They don't get invited anymore. They used to.
Yeah.
They used to. Glenn Greenwald was on
Yeah.
MSNBC all the time until he fought back with them. He wouldn't agree with their narrative, and they just stopped inviting him.
And it's not one person that's saying these things. Dave Rubin has said this for years now. It seemed like it seemed this long. These guys have been around for years now. And you brought up two people. You brought up Bill Maher and Jimmy Dore this week because of how Bill Maher responded on Friday about the anthem stuff, and he talked about some different things. Dore just shredded him. Like it was so strange to hear Jimmy Dore rant and raving as though Bill Maher is not like 95% left enough. But this little 5 minutes to be a full on, you know, socialist, far leftist is not enough for Jimmy Dore. He was saying so much absurd things about Bill Maher. You're like, have you ever watched this man's show and understand his shtick? He even, I kid you not, I wish I had found all this and been able to pull the video, because what I heard was someone else talking about it, and I couldn't figure out how to find a video clip I could use of just Dore doing it. It can't be that hard to find. I actually should just go through the YouTube and find the clip. But he basically joke canceled him. He's like, at one point he said, he's like, Bill shouldn't say that joke, doesn't he know? And it was like, seriously, Jimmy Dore, you basically failed comedian who's now just a commentator is going after Bill Maher, who started as a comedian, who's now made it as a talk show. It's like it, and that's what I'm getting to with this left thing. It's like where they are on that scale can move. And I agree with Glenn. I think Glenn Greenwald is probably, if there's any role model in American modern history of free speech and living and dying with this is a guy that lives in South America under death threats because that he did for Snowden. Mm-hmm. And I believe he's also connected with trying to help Bradley Manning when Bradley was trying to leak documents himself. Mm-hmm. So to know that it's all turned on a dime because of, quote, Tucker Carlson. We're going to get to an example when we talk about Nicki Minaj again. One of her tweets is he would, because of what she did with the Tucker thing, people would go, well, don't you know he's a white supremacist? Well, don't you know he's this? She's like, what is wrong with you people? Like, she's in the middle of it too. Like, because of this one little thing, and you guys know she is no conservative, right? It's like she's in that same, she's 95% this, but she wavered this little topic just for a moment, and they're coming right at her with the sticks. It's going, get back in line. You get back into your little socialist marketing.
Hey, we're News Talk with Brandon and Bob. We're here to tell you about some of the facts so you don't have to waste your time watching CNN.
We don't want you wasting any time with CNN.
Or Fox or MSNBC or some of these other guys that are making a whole lot of money.
Et cetera, et cetera.
It's not paying.